find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hi, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Tracie Harris, and with me today is my co-host, Martin Wagner. Hey, Martin, how you doing today?
I'm just dancing on air. It's a great day
Okay.
to be alive.
Today is Sunday, July 11th. We're a live call-in show. We accept calls from local Austin, Texas, and we also stream live on the internet at ustreamtv.com. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a nonprofit educational foundation promoting positive atheism and separation of church and state. You can visit ACA online at www.atheist-community.org. It includes a fact page that answers commonly asked questions that are put to atheists and also to the program. If you can't get through on the phones today, you can check and see if maybe your question is answered there. We're live on Sundays from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central Local Public Access TV. To watch live outside of Austin, oh, I think I just, sorry, repeating myself. There's also live chat at the Ustream. The website includes archives of past shows, and you can also subscribe to the podcast. The show site is www.atheist-experience.com. ACA also sponsors an internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. The site for the nonprofits is www.nonprofits, that's PORPHETS radio.com. Nonprofits normally has a regular schedule, but I think they've been doing guerrilla shows. Martin,
Yeah,
might have
we just did
info.
one. Yeah.
Okay.
This week I did one with my friends Gia Grillo, Chris Connor, and it was a lot of fun. I don't think it's up on iTunes yet, but there is the listing at the Atheist Experience blog if you want to grab it early. The link is there. So that was a ton of fun, and I think we'll probably do some more because it may be fall before they're able to actually get back on there bi-weekly.
Okay, but they could probably still check for updates at the website, you think?
Oh, sure,
Okay.
yeah. And at the blog, whenever we do one, we'll just announce it,
Okay.
post it there. So.
ACA sponsors weekly meetings that include a Sunday brunch at Romeo's on Barton Springs from 11:30 to 1 p.m., except on the first Sunday of the month when we do a public lecture at the Austin History Center. We actually had one today about Camp Quest, and the next lecture that we'll be having is August 1st, and features Sarah Weiss and Brian Spears on the topic of the importance of separation of church and state. Following the show, most of the cast and crew head over to Threadgill's on 301 West Riverside for dinner. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to join us. ACA hosts an atheist happy hour every Thursday evening starting at 7 p.m. at the Dog and Duck on 17th and Guadalupe. If you would like to contact us via email, you can. You can send questions or feedback to tv@atheist-community.org. Callers who disagree or are given top priority on the program, if you're calling just to say thanks, then email is probably the best option for you. Finally, be sure to check out the unofficial show blog at atheistexperience.blogspot.com and the Counter-Apologetics wiki at ironchariots.org. So today we have Martin Wagner.
Hi. We do. That's it. How you doing?
Good.
I'm doing good too. It's been a good week. Interesting week.
Okay, good.
Busy week. Yeah. And here we are. We've been off the air for like the last couple of Sundays, haven't we?
Yeah.
Not really had shows, so we're sort of, I guess, getting back into it.
We are.
It's been a bit of a goofy day in the studio today, and I really hope we carry that energy over into the program itself.
Sure.
Because I'm hoping to have a really good time today and get some good calls in.
Yeah, and I think today is going to be a heavy caller program, at least I hope it will be. And if not, and I'm hoping we've had a little bit of technical challenge. Some of our top tech people are absent for today's show, and I had brought in some Symphony of Science videos that I was hoping that we could air if things get a little bit slow. But if you haven't seen it, Symphony of Science, you might Google that. It's a really good website that features music videos that support science and promote science information.
Well, hopefully we get those going, control room.
Is it? Yeah.
They're smart guys in there. They can figure out how to
if there's a problem or if we can
press buttons and
possibly
twiddle
run
knobs and make stuff happen. So
anyway.
Otherwise, I think we're just going to, this is just going to be, we're very loose, as you can tell today. We just didn't really prepare a thing because it's that kind of day. So we're just going to make this, I think, throw open the phone lines as soon as we can, get some calls in, talk to some folks, just answer questions, and let you voice your opinions, and we'll exchange opinions and argue and just...
Yeah, and it actually does look like the phones are loading.
Hijinks and shenanigans,
but
so we'll wait.
Don't have information from the studio yet. It looks like we've got one coming in just now.
Okay.
So that would be on line 2. We've got...
Luca,
yeah.
looks like.
Okay, and that's from... Is there a location?
Well, maybe not. We'll just find out.
Luca, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, you're in New York.
Yeah, I called and talked to you guys maybe a month or two ago.
Okay.
So, being that I'm an atheist myself, I've called, actually, I talked to you guys, I talked to Matt, and always we basically agree. So I try to think of something that we might disagree on, maybe.
Okay.
So I think the premise you'll agree with, and it is that basically religious people are not stupid, they're not crazy, at least not more so than everybody else.
Sure.
They'll be able to follow any rational argument. If you try to persuade them that Zeus does not exist or that Bigfoot does not exist, they'll be perfectly capable of following you and agreeing with you and whatnot. It's just that there's an element of very compartmentalized irrationality to them, so that the specific belief about the talking snake or about the 72 virgins or whatever, they simply do not accept a rational case for that.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the part I think I knew you would agree on. But my next step, you may agree or may not, is that that same compartmentalized irrationality, I think, is present in everybody, not just in religious people. Let me give you a couple of examples. People that smoke cigarettes. If I told you on paper, there's a product that you can buy that is going to make you be relaxed. And you're going to have something to hold in your hand when you're talking to girls, but it's going to make your breath stink, it's going to make your teeth rot, it's going to kill you 20 years early, it's going to cost you $150,000 in your lifetime. A rational person wouldn't go for that, but somehow people do. Or, I don't know, maybe this example might be a little controversial to most people, but people that think that America is the most free country in the world. Whereas just, if you look at it factually, there isn't a single thing you're free to do in America that you're not free to do in France or Denmark or Holland, Italy or Australia or anything like that.
Luca, can I interject something for a minute?
Sure.
How about if we restate what you were saying as opposed to saying that everybody does this, how about if we say that religion isn't the only thing that causes this?
Well, I would say that religion is not a cause, it's a manifestation of a root problem of basic irrationality of humanity. It's, I would put it that way. I don't know if religion is the cause. I would ask you to present a case for that as opposed to what I'm...
my case would be simply that people are indoctrinated in order to make them not think clearly in this one aspect. Whereas with smoking, I would say that's an addiction.
Okay, sure, but then what about the inability to see that you're being indoctrinated?
Well, you're a child.
Well, I think Luca has a point, which is that everyone is capable of being selectively irrational. There is our emotional side can sometimes make us do things that intellectually we know better than to do. But it can at times be very difficult to overcome those emotional urges and not act upon them. And there is an aspect of maturation that sort of has to take place before you are capable of, I'm not saying in everyone, but many people do really have these problems. To use the example of smoking, people will do it at a certain point in their lives. Maybe they're young and immature and want to look cool. And then as they get older and they get past that phase of immaturity, they realize, oh, well, okay, now this is something really bad for me. And then they try to quit. And many people do quit smoking after a few years. So I think that people do have a capacity to compartmentalize their thoughts and where they can be entirely rational about most subjects, but then have something, the term sometimes we use is guilty pleasure, things like that, where we will say, yeah, I know this really isn't good for me, but I do it anyway. But I think that religion is, ramps that up several notches, right? The religion has the aspect of cultural indoctrination from birth that other, say, selective, irrational behaviors don't.
Right.
And so religion is, again, the root cause may just be in our minds and that we are our brain chemistry.
But yes, you can do this to people.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
people are built in such a way that you can do this
as
to them.
beings, we are fallible in what we do.
Right.
So I think you are probably right in saying that the root cause lies in here somewhere. But then, depending upon what it is that you are addicted to, whether
right.
it's
That's
drugs
the thing.
or religion, I think is just the stronger, just has the stronger indoctrinal.
It's a structured attempt to subvert your reason.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It is a structured and systematic system that works to make you think along the lines of an apologetic type of reasoning that is not rational. So it sort of cuts off that rational thinking at a really early age, to the point that when the kid gets older, they don't have these kind of rational toolbox. They go out, sometimes they go out into the world and they say, well, I'm chucking this religion, but they go forward and they have no critical thinking skills because they were never taught how to really reason. They were just simply taught to rely on this set of rules.
I disagree. Sorry, Tracy, I have to disagree. I mean, honestly, I think there are, I can't speak for you guys, but I can definitely speak for me. I think there are thousands of religious people, devout Christians, that are more intelligent than I am. Certainly better educated.
I'm not saying that they're stupid or uneducated.
I'll disagree.
I did not say they were stupid or uneducated. I said I said they were indoctrinated.
They're not capable of critical thinking, and
When it comes to this religion, correct. That was your premise.
Okay, but not in everything else.
No, I'm not talking about everything else. I'm talking about indoctrination specifically into religion.
Yeah. Because if you ask, you tell your, you tell your typical fundamentalist Christian that drinking Mountain Dew will make you invisible, then he's likely to be just as skeptical as anybody else. But then if you tell him some story from the Bible, he will not exercise that same level of skepticism. And so there is something about religion, and we'll say Christianity because in our culture that's the one that's the most prevalent and the one we know most about. There is something about these beliefs that speak to emotional needs, and then as Tracy pointed out, where religion is concerned, there is this institutionalized culture that is designed from a very, very young age to encourage you not to think skeptically and critically about this particular thing, about God, about Jesus, whereas about many other things, say buying a used car, right? These same people will be perfectly sensible in other areas of their lives where you would need basic skepticism to get by. This one thing, there is a concerted effort to subvert that skepticism. That's the point Tracy was trying to make.
Well, then let me ask you this. Would you say that there is any significant difference between how the religious institution does this mechanism and the way our political environment does, the way Rush Limbaugh would, or, but the way we're talking to...
Yes, I would. I would say that they get your parents involved in order to reinforce this in the home 24/7. They've got you in a meeting 3 times a week, and they're having you singing hymns, doing Sunday school, in front of a preacher, and then mom and dad are reinforcing this at home. They've got you reading Bible verses. I mean, this is not just a marketing campaign. This is getting that kid in there, immersing him into this, getting his parents to reinforce this to him, and then putting him into an entire little subculture that believes everything they believe until an age where he hits a point where he's probably not likely to question it, or if he does question it, as I said, he'll come out, not do very well, go right back into religion. We see this all the time in our viewer mail.
And I would say that the kind of political extremism that you're talking about, right, is a similar form of extreme irrationality.
Yes.
However, the difference would be between those two things that religion and politics address different human needs, right? Religion addresses...
in many cases, equally efficiently.
Yeah, but you have to, at the same time, you don't tend to see, well, again, maybe today we're seeing more of it just because we've become so polarized in this country. But political movements come and go, and they flow a bit, whereas religion tends to be a very real constant in our culture also. So I would say that there are perhaps, well, I don't know if I would even call them minor. There are significant differences, and significant similarities between the two.
Yeah, I would say if you take an example of like Nazi Germany, that to me was ramping up politics like a religion. I mean, you don't see that normally. I mean, at least not in the United States. That would not be a normal
the cult
thing.
of personality
right,
around
where
Hitler,
you're just like
right.
taking the kids and throwing them into this and just really brainwashing them. That's not quite what politics is in the U.S. I mean, yes, it's slanted, and yes, you get marketing, and you get lies and damn lies and statistics and all of that. But it's still not the same sort of immersion that you get with religion in this country, which I think there are political systems that do act like religion in that regard. We just don't seem to have them here.
Well, we do have them. They're just not vast enough to gain the absolute power. That I think that very much, there are figures on maybe there's some on the far left, but I definitely would think that there are figures on the far right that are certainly, I think, embracing this whole cult of personality aspect.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is you're not taking your kids 3 times a week to hear lessons from these people.
No, you're not, but you're on the internet every day.
Well,
so
sure,
it's a different kind of immersion. So like I said, I think there are similarities that should concern us between those things.
Let me ask you this then. Do you have a good reason for, and probably you do, but what would be the good reason for focusing on trying to dismantle a specific institution that monopolizes on the inherent irrationality of people, as opposed to trying to find ways of addressing the irrationality itself as a root cause?
I wouldn't have any problem with somebody who wanted to address the irrationality itself. This particular program deals with religion because religion is a gigantically harmful institution that causes death and horrible things all around the globe. So I look at that as like a gigantic block in the wall.
Yeah, this is an atheism show. It's not a politics show.
Or it's not even a
Politics comes
skeptic
up,
show for that. I mean, we support skepticism, but that's not what the show is. It's skepticism aimed at, from an atheist perspective.
But in a general sense, I mean, I would say, to answer your question, my focus would be on skepticism and critical thinking in all areas, in all walks of life. So yeah, it wouldn't be necessarily, my focus wouldn't be, well, all we have to do is wipe out X institution and all the stupid thinking will go away.
We could just as easily be sitting here saying, why aren't we out cleaning up the BP oil spill? I mean, there's plenty of causes in the world. This is the one that we take on.
Yeah, so it's, I would definitely say you encourage the critical thinking and rational thinking first. That's how you have to then the institutions hopefully will take care of themselves.
Yeah, and for me, one of the worst things is just seeing what's done to children. I mean, that's what gets me, is that it grabs people at an incredibly young age and just throws them into a systematic indoctrination like nothing I've ever seen personally.
No.
So,
well, do you guys have other callers on the line?
Yeah, we do.
But those are really good questions, Luca. We appreciate
thank
it
you.
really much.
Okay, thanks, Luca.
Good food for thought. Thanks, man.
Okay, it looks like next up we've got Jeremy on line 1, I guess.
Yeah, so before we go, I wanted to follow up on what you just mentioned there, the whole indoctrination of children aspect of it, and that's certainly something that Dawkins brings up. And that just reminds me of talking to a really good friend of mine who's just come into town, and I hadn't seen her in some years, and she was telling me about this experience of just before she got to Austin.
Sure.
She was staying with a friend of hers up in like the Tyler area, and some girl she's known for ages. And this woman has gotten very caught up in the Seventh-day Adventist culture that is in that area.
Sure.
And just explained to me just the disturbing aspects of all of this. And these people really do sort of move into your lives and take over. They have their little, it's similar to, the way she described it, they operate, similar to, the Mormons, where they have little guys and they come to the house and they're wearing their little tags. And she said she was there visiting, she had her friend's house and just doing some stuff, right? And these two guys just walked in, right, as if it was their house. And, just sat there and questioned her about, this or that other aspect of her life. And there was this very weirdly controlling aspect to the whole thing. And then she said she also went with her friend to there's this lesson with her friend and her kids. She has these 4 kids. And observed this lesson having all to do with sin and the concept of sin and how, and here's little Johnny and he's committed a sin, so what must he do, right? And it was filling their heads with this whole idea of sin and guilt and punishment and redemption. And this is all like, how to be a good family classes, right?
Correct, yes. It's disturbing.
And my friend was, and she's telling me, you know, and what was so baffling about it, she said, was that there was nothing, zero zitch, you know, nothing.
Yes.
In that whole lesson, you know, about love, right? They never said anything like, hey, go up to your mom someday and just give her a hug and tell her how much you love her for all the things she does for you. There's nothing like that.
Right. Because, the first step is to convince you that you're depraved and that you need salvation. And without that,
and then it's an authoritarian system, right?
It's you need this.
Yeah. Because any sort of love in that kind of religious context is, exists within an authoritarian framework.
Yeah. You just condemn everything that is like natural and human, and you call it evil.
Yeah.
And then you say that you need to be saved from this evil that you can't get away from. And it's like, no, I can't get away from being human. I mean, I'm not allowed to see an attractive person and think sexual thoughts. Like, that's really hell-worthy. I mean, that's normal.
Yeah.
And to tell people that they're awful for being normal, there's something really wrong with that. Okay. We got line one, Jeremy, I think, here from St. Louis, Missouri. Jeremy?
Hi, Mom.
How are you?
Oh, hi, Tracie. Hey, Martin.
Hey.
Hi. Before I ask my question, just want to say sorry about the whole Texas school board.
We don't blame you.
Yeah.
No,
well,
yes,
you
we're
know,
sorry too.
One of the few good things that may come out of that is that the state is so damn broke we may not be able to afford those stupid textbooks after all. So, you know,
yeah, Illinois got that problem too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But my question was about evolution being tied into atheism. I know that there are atheists that don't accept evolution. I think it's fair to say that the majority do.
Right.
But there are also many theists that do accept evolution. And like in regards to like there being a connection with evolution and atheism, I know Tracie on a previous show said that there was like I think the term she used was a non-factor in regards to like theism and religion, like specifically I think she mentioned Christianity. But like I'm not trying to throw you guys like on the show against each other, but I've seen shows where you have like the Darwin fish on the desk in front of you.
Sure.
And that's like kind of like, well, at least to me, it's implying that like evolution like destroys God, and that like at least gives me that impression. And I was just wondering if you could like kind of like talk on that, because I think it's a reasonable question, because there are many like great thinkers that differ on this question. I mean, if you could ask Stephen Jay Gould the question, he would most likely say, I mean, what's the problem? But if you were to ask Dawkins, well, he wouldn't have that answer.
Okay, Jeremy, with regard to, okay, first of all, you understand atheism is not believing in God, correct? We're on the same page. Okay, and then the question is, how would evolution impact whether or not someone believes in a God? The only way that I can think of that it would have that impact would be if a person attributed speciation to God, correct? Okay, so you've got some people who are attributing speciation to God, and they're doing it from a creationist standpoint, because as you say, there's other Christians who accept evolution, so they see God as responsible for speciation through evolution. So you're appealing, there's an appeal to a very tiny group of Christians who accept really hard creationism and say that, you know, this is what God did. If evolution hits that person, it's possible for that person's theism to be impacted by a theory like evolution. So they see that, oh, there is this real explanation that I can see works, and it's not what I thought God did. And if a lot of their belief in God hinges on that creationism, then they will be impacted. And there certainly are people who contact us and say, I learned about evolution and became an atheist. So for them, I'm sure that in their head that was very connected. But the reality is, you're operating from a fallacy when you accept creationism. So when you're attributing it to God with zero evidence, that's the error. It's not because you haven't seen evolution yet, it's because you're believing something you shouldn't be believing in the first place. So if they were able to see the fallacy in that without ever seeing evolution, if they ever investigated it and said, you know what, there's no reason for this, for me to believe this, that would tear them away from that as well. It's just that they didn't see that. But the fact is, they believed something that shouldn't have been believed based on zero evidence, and that was why evolution impacted them, because they were in a fallacy that they didn't recognize to begin with.
You kind of had to jump into it.
I'm sorry, what?
Since there's I guess you're trying to say since there's no evidence that to believe it, that's the key issue.
I believe that's the problem, because if they were hinging their belief in God on an idea of creationism for which they have no evidence, then they've got a problem already outside of evolution. I mean, they should, in my mind, they should be seeing that. Whether or not they ever accept evolution, they should be able to see clearly that there is no evidence to be believing what they're believing. That's the problem. But they will connect that. There are people who have said, you know, once I recognized evolution was true, I just gave up belief in God, because they were hinging that on creationism. But really, to me, the problem is the fallacy that they were hanging on to. And if evolution made them see that fallacy, that's fine. But they should have been able to have that fallacy demonstrated to them, regardless of whether or not they adopt any other, you know, idea of speciation.
Yeah. I think Dawkins' point was that, well, you know, his quote from Blind Watchmaker, which is that evolution does not necessarily lead to atheism, and there is not a necessary link between the two, but you know, evolution does make it possible to be an intellectually satisfied atheist. And what he means by that is that it does give valid and confirmable, you know, non-religious explanations for the diversity of life. But you're right, there are a number of theists, theistic evolutionists, and most creationists absolutely hate them. So I think that what you're looking at in creationism is that, you know, creationism, you have to remember, is more of a doctrinal response to of evolutionary science, and it didn't really become very aggressive until after Darwin's theory was published, and then in the last century and a half. So it wouldn't say, I don't think that there is a necessary link, but for an atheist, evolution just does make it easy to understand that you don't need invisible magic beings to explain these things. And it isn't just evolution either. I think that any real valid exploration into the sciences will help you understand the natural world better, and the more you know, the less you have to fall back on supernatural or magic explanations for things.
Right.
Because many times what you're doing with those explanations, those beliefs, you're just filling gaps in knowledge. And the problem that I see now with all of us living in what should be a rational age, a scientific age, is that people still will fill gaps in their knowledge with beliefs rather than scientific knowledge, because there are things about the beliefs that are emotionally satisfying, that address particular psychological needs that they might have. And science, if it does anything well, is very good at throwing cold water on human self-importance. And I think one reason that creationists dislike evolution so much is that it punctures this whole notion that we are somehow special little snowflakes, that we are the special creation of some loving celestial being that has put all of this here for us, and that we're at the center of it all, and it's really all about us all the time. Evolution essentially says we're part of nature, and we've come and we will go, and something will come along to replace us. And it's a big cycle, and someday it will end.
What I think is really sad about what you're saying, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but what strikes me really sadly is that the fact of our being able to see ourselves as special is like meaningless in the framework of religion. It's like, so it's just in your head. Like, it doesn't matter that human beings see human beings as special. I mean, if God doesn't see you as special, you're worthless. And if it's just you, then it doesn't matter. And that, to me, is like the huge dehumanizing aspect of it, to say that if you believe your life is meaningful, if you believe your life has purpose, if you believe that your life has worth, it doesn't matter, because you're just a human being. And only if God values it does it matter. And to me, that just pisses all over humanity. I mean, I don't even know how a nice way to say it. It is dehumanizing.
But that's, again, that's the goal of religion, is to, you know, tear down the esteem of the believer so as to reconstruct it with religion at the center of it.
Correct.
So, and then once it's kind of got its hooks into you that way, it's really hard to give that up.
Yeah.
It really is hard. So.
But to answer your question, I think the Darwin fish is probably put up in response to creationist, theistic arguments. Yeah. Not necessarily that it is some big blow to theism overall.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have no doctrines, we have no dogmas, there are no catechisms or requirements that we all march in lockstep with the things we believe about the world and us in it. The only thing that I think we really do agree upon pretty reliably is that we don't think that any gods exist. And beyond that, we will argue heatedly amongst ourselves just as much as we will with believers.
Yes, we do.
So.
Well, thanks for clearing all that up. Really
sure. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate your call.
Yeah, definitely.
And it looks
Thank
like,
you.
line 2, it looks like we've got Stephen in Dallas. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, this is my girlfriend and I are actually calling because we're huge fans of the show.
Thank
and,
you.
That's what you're doing. And we actually were curious if you've heard of an organization called Concerned Women for America or something like that.
Concerned Women for America what?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yes.
You're right. Yeah, we were stumbled across a couple of YouTube videos of Wendy Wright meeting, well, quote unquote, debating Richard Dawkins. And my girlfriend actually thought that
You're going in and out really bad on us.
Yeah, you're
We're sort of
breaking
like-
up just a little bit, Stephen.
Yeah.
and you're on speaker, sorry.
Yeah, there we
My
go.
girlfriend brought up the point that scientists tend to not put stuff into layman's terms for creationists. And it just didn't seem to not really click with Wendy when he was talking to her.
Well, it could just be that Wendy's dumb, right? I mean, that would not be something I would discount, but
I've watched his debates with Alistair McGrath, and in my view, just talking theology, I thought the ideas were going straight over McGrath's head. I mean, the things that he was answering were not with Dawkins.
It seems to be like that with all debates that I've watched. Like there's a rabbi that debated Hitchens and several other incidents.
this is why I say that I mean, debates, I think, really are just theater. I don't think that they are particularly useful.
Right.
Theists go into them with sort of a script that they have prepared, and I don't really know that they ultimately sway folks very much.
Although the great debate with Hitchens, they did an
Well,
audience
there are
poll.
good ones,
Yeah.
there was, absolutely fantastic one where, is the Catholic Church a force for good in the world?
They
And
did an
that was-
audience poll before the debate. They did an audience poll after the debate, and there was a huge difference in the leanings of the
Overwhelmingly
audience.
no after the
Yeah,
debate, right?
yeah.
So you're right. There can be good ones, but for the most part, I think when you see these debates take place, many times it really does tend to be the people, the theists, the creationists. It's the folks on that side are the ones who really, really pursue the debate format, because creationism in academia is a non-starter, right? It's a science killer. There's just there's no room for investigation or inquiry or anything like that when you just creationism doesn't provide a body. It doesn't provide a testable hypotheses. It's just non-scientific in every possible way, and so since they cannot get their ideas taught as science in classrooms, and since they don't get the respect from academia, they seek these debate forums where they'll get some prominent mouthpiece for the creationist side, and they'll try to get some prominent scientists to debate them. And then they can sort of do their routine that they have perfected in churches.
Essentially, it's a publicity thing.
But it's a way of, if you can get more of your folks packed into the debate audience and get them cheering more loudly for you, then you have won. That's another real problem that I have with the debate format. Whoever wins is the person who gives the better performance in it. And it really isn't about getting to facts and truth. It's not really about educating. It's about who can get their message out more clearly, whether it's right or wrong. And so and they love the idea of they love the idea of truth being about being essentially a publicity truth being a popularity contest, shall we say?
The whole debate eventually turned into a redefining of the word evidence, and she demanded his evidence, but what she was trying to get him to do is essentially just say, "You have to believe me." And he cited examples from several museums of fossils that she should look at, and DNA patterns and things like that, and just went over her head. And she said, "Well, that's not evidence."
Well, yeah, I mean, when they haven't even been educated in the basics of the science, you can try to hit them with that, and then they'll be like, no, that's just, no. Yeah, and you get the argument from
You don't really know
which
what she was looking for. There was no position you could take to change her mind.
Well, there's no cure for willful ignorance, I have often found, which can be depressing, so, otherwise. So, yeah.
Anyway, we just wanted to say that we like what you're doing, and
Thanks very much.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we've got, looks like Jacob on line 3.
He's been holding for a while.
On Minneapolis?
I think so. Jacob, are you on?
Hey.
Hey.
Is this Jacob?
Yeah.
How you doing?
fine. How are you?
Good.
We are well.
All right. So I'm calling because I have evidence for the Genesis creation account.
Oh, you do?
Not just against evolution, but for the creation account.
Bring it.
All right. Specifically, it's about the flood, because if you look in the fossil record, what you see is at lower strata you will find fossils of weaker animals and other creatures and that kind of thing, and then as you go up and up, you will find more complex things. And so when the flood hit, basically what would have happened is that the creatures that we find at the lower end weren't able to escape the flood as quickly, and you get further to the top, and you get things like humans and things that can swim and stuff that can escape the flood more easily. So.
But I thought everything escaped the flood. Didn't Noah take 2 of everything? And 7 of some or something like that? So everything, I mean, all species escaped the flood then, correct? So they should all be alive today, right? Do you understand what I'm asking? There should be no extinct species except for modern extinctions.
So, like, we have dinosaurs and that kind of thing, which
would have gone on the ark according to the Bible, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, then, if you're saying dinosaurs would not have been able to fit on the ark, right?
I've always heard it was
Okay.
baby dinosaurs.
Well, let's go with this one then. Okay, so if dinosaurs were not able to fit in the ark, right? So you're essentially saying that because we find, say, the fossil remains of brontosaurs and tyrannosaurs deeper than we find fossil remains of humans, that means that they were weaker than humans?
Well,
so T-Rexes were weaker than humans because...
I guess my question is, doesn't the creation account says that 2 of every animal went on that ark, and that there were some of which they brought 7 that were sacrificial animals later. So you can't say that dinosaurs didn't go on the ark and then say that you're supporting the creationist account as recounted in the Bible. There would have to be dinosaurs on the ark, or else there would have to be no dinosaurs, ever. That's the only way that argument works. The Bible says he put every animal on that ark.
Well, actually, God told Noah to only put things that breathe through their nostrils on the ark, but...
Okay, well, that's still, that's still...
Wait a minute, he brought birds. Wait. So you're saying... But a dinosaur does breathe through its nostrils.
Yeah, I mean, that would still leave all the land dinosaurs, right? So we've got some dinosaurs, crowding the ark, and yeah. But then imagine this then. What about, okay, there are some humans who know how to swim, right? And some who don't. There are some who can't. So wouldn't we see human remains at all different levels of strata with the humans who were non-swimming humans? We'd find their skeletons. We'd find human beings at all different levels.
We would find all animals at one level, leveled out from a worldwide flood. There would be humans and everything else put together on a single layer of strata.
Right. With the non-swimming humans at the bottom of that
layer
and the swimmers desperately like... Yeah, I mean... Yeah, there would be like this, it would be, if you imagine, geological strata would basically be like a big sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Where you'd have all these other rock layers.
There'd be nothing, all the animals
with nothing,
dead in a
and then there'd be this one layer where it was just
modern
densely packed with the, rich creamy nougat filling of like 10 billion fossils, all together in one single layer. And you wouldn't find fossils in any layers either above or below, right? Because if the flood was an event, you would find everything at the same layer.
It seems like it.
Yeah, I mean... Right, and
that's what I would predict if I was going to go looking for it.
Yeah, because it's not like the flood is said to have lasted for eons of geological time, right? It was 40 days and 40 nights,
right.
So.
Well, first of all, even the humans that couldn't swim could still be able to like grab onto things and that kind of thing, and obviously lower organisms wouldn't be able to.
But everything died. I mean, the point of the flood was to kill every human being, right, except for Noah and his immediate family. correct? So all the humans died according to the biblical account, except for Noah and his immediate family.
So whatever the non-swimming humans would have grabbed onto would have been grabbing onto something else.
They'd have been grabbing onto it for 40 days.
Yeah,
I mean, they'd have been dead.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the thing was to kill everyone. So, I mean, the God that tried to kill everybody would have killed everybody, I would assume, since he's God. And that Noah and his family would have been the only surviving humans, and everything would have been smashed in that flood layer.
Yeah, everything else died, but they didn't all just like suddenly drop dead all at once. Some of them
In a 40-day, it would have been a 40-day event, though. It's
Yeah.
like Martin. I mean, in geological time, that's nothing. That's the same moment.
So you would still see all of these. You would see like fossils of human beings clinging to other human beings, and elephants and gerbils and whatever
and where
else.
did the water go?
Well, it's all.
Where did it go?
It,
But yeah, I mean, I think that's problematic.
yeah.
Well,
So
I mean, enough water came down in 40 days to be able to cover Mount Everest, according to the Bible. So obviously, it would be a pretty powerful flood, and it should be able to make it seem as though it had taken place over millions of years by any other kind of.
I don't see how a giant flood that lasted for 40 days would come out looking like it lasted millions of years. It should still look like something that lasted 40 days.
Yeah.
And I'm still wondering, if the entire planet was covered in water, where did the water go?
yeah, I mean, it could have gone into the oceans because the whole planet was an ocean. So maybe we have this big watery core at the center of the Earth.
I mean, I'm not trying to be cruel, Jacob, but this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate the call, but you're going to have to think a little bit more about this. But I do thank you for the call.
All right.
Have a good Sunday. Okay.
I wish I could say well done, but it would be a cruel lie.
He called, and I will say it was brave.
Yes, it was.
This is John from Austin, and he's on line 1. Hi, John.
Hello.
How are you doing?
How are you?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can.
Okay. There's been several comments made. I can't even really remember all of them now, but there were some interesting things said about the first thing to be agreeable. I have a lot of problems with the abuse of children, in particular, in fundamentalist families and stuff. I experienced a little bit of that myself as a child, and so I identify with that, and I think that's true. But we're mainly talking about the hellfire brimstone, firestone, brimstone bullshit and stuff. And I think some generalizations have been made that I would like to address, and I see this happen on this show a lot. I mean, 1 minute it's like, we understand that all theists, are different, and they have the progressive side and the traditionalist stagnant side and even the regressive side.
And then we just hit them all
the
anyway.
next minute,
Yeah.
It's like you really want to go back and keep the argument in terms of the Scopes monkey trial, and you also you don't just speak from the antiquated religious viewpoint, but also from an antiquated scientific viewpoint. We can stick everything if you can't stick something in a test tube and shake it up and put a number on it, then it doesn't exist. And that's not
that's
really
a
what's
simplification,
going on in science today. And so
How do you
I
mean?
have a problem with that. I find the entire argument of the existence of God to be mostly semantical, because the word God is so ill-defined. And I think, real quickly, I'll finish. What is said among believers, even moderate Christian believers, as far as they go and they pretend as if they support the old interpretations of the Bible, but I think there's a lot more going. I think there's a lot more secretive open-mindedness going on in religion. I think people have evolved to.
Can you give an example of this?
What people have evolved?
No, I mean this was an example of this secretive open-mindedness. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that.
Well, I know a lot of different types of people, and I know some religious people, and if you really talk to them, you'll find out, they don't think God is a little old man that lives in the sky, and they don't really believe anymore. They're questioning the whole justice of the eternal hell. Some are even questioning afterlife in general. Is that really that important? And really is what the message is about. Is
Okay.
Where is this
better this life that we're going through now, obviously.
Okay. Well, I think I see what you mean there, and all of this is sort of by way of pointing out that we make too many unfair generalizations on the show. Is that sort of what you're getting at? Because here's...
I really believe there's a lot of heavy generalization going on. Like Tracie said something about religion in general has this idea of disdain for humanity, and that...
Well, I think that's true. And when we talk about, for example, doctrines and beliefs and ideas that religions have, you know, we are maybe not necessarily saying all of the religious believers out there subscribe to those, but at the same time, a couple of points that I'd like to make. First off is that I would suggest that theism in all its forms, even the most open-minded, progressive, what have you, still has at its root an unproven assertion, which is that there is some sort of sentient being, whether you think of him as an old man with a beard or the Force or midichlorians or whatever they are. There's some sort of sentient, causative, intelligent entity out there that made us and made all of it. Intelligent thinking, having ideas, acting upon that, just
pre-qualifications of one intelligent being. Okay.
Yeah, or several if you're polytheistic, and so this is just a fundamental unproven claim that is at the root of any theistic religion, and so that right there, whether you at that point become some a bomb-throwing fundamentalist wacko or just a very nice even-tempered and tolerant, moderate, you still have that particular set of ideas at the root of your thinking.
And generally, only through that filter does humanity matter.
And so it's true that...
I agree with that.
I do.
Yeah.
Only through that filter humanity matters.
Well,
that doesn't even make sense to me.
Christianity has a doctrine of salvation. Mm-hmm. What is the purpose of, what do I need saving from if humanity matters on humanity's terms? What am I being saved from?
Well, we're saved from ourselves.
Okay, that's my point.
That's
my point. They're offering me salvation from my being human. I don't need to be saved from being human. That's a dehumanizing doctrine.
Do you see what I mean?
Go ahead. Is he on? Wait,
you have to hit the one.
Which one was it, John? Okay, John, sorry about that. Go ahead.
You're back. Sorry. We just needed to. We just kind of. Tracie needed to make her point there, and too much crosstalk kind of is a little confusing.
Yeah, telling me that I need to be saved because I'm a human being, and that human beings require some sort of external salvation because being a human being is not good or not good enough, is dehumanizing. That's the very definition of dehumanizing.
This idea that by simple virtue of being born and existing at all, we need saving. Because we are
you're saying
corrupt
something's wrong with me, and there's not. I'm human, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with being human.
I got you. Can I make a point?
Sure.
Okay. Salvation itself is undefined here because if you're talking about, once again, the salvation from eternal torment and God is this sadomasochistic, this masochistic master
doesn't have to be hell.
who's going to torture you for eternity.
Not what I'm talking about.
Hang on.
Bullshit, and you don't need salvation from that. But we're improving. As a race, there's lots of kinds of evolution going on. There's intellectual evolution, technological, I believe spiritual, and moral evolution is going on. And I believe that we have evidence of this everywhere. If you look at the governments of today, as messed up as some of them are, and I mean, they used to burn people at the stake, and it used to be a public event.
And the point is,
that doesn't happen in the U.S. anymore, anyway, and it doesn't happen in most countries anymore, anyway.
Right. Because people figured it out.
Yeah, I would suggest that.
That's what I mean, and that's what we've been saved from.
No, it's not.
No. Let me tell you what's done the saving here, because I think I know what you're getting at in a general term. These ideas that you bring up are part of what is known as a cultural enlightenment. It is a period in our history, especially in the history of Western civilization, known as the Enlightenment. And this was a period when secular ideas, non-religious ideas, ideas that were not tied to the idea of a god, a deity, this sort of punishing father figure, these ideas began to be pushed to the back burner, and things like human rights, like the idea of the dignity of the human being as an individual, began to have more and more influence in our culture. So yes, we don't burn people at the stake anymore because secular ideas made it clear that that was an abominable thing to do.
Yeah.
When you had very strong religious cultures, you saw that sort of thing, just as you saw justification for slavery. It is because of non-religious ideas that we see these kinds of intellectual evolution that you're talking about, this idea of, you know, egalitarianism between the genders and the races and what have you. You know, or racism is, these are ideas that are being fought not because of anything having to do with, you know, belief in a God or a deity.
But there's a greater point. There's
I know what you're saying,
yeah.
and by the way, you don't see where I'm going at all.
That's true, we don't.
And I would
Yeah.
say an argument to that it's not only religious systems that burn people at the stake and hung people. It's
Agreed.
also political system, it's war systems, it's economic systems. So it's not only religious systems.
Agreed.
To blame religion is for all the ills of the earth.
Nobody has.
There's another generalization that I hear going on here.
Oh, no, we're not doing
We've never
that.
done that.
We're not doing that.
We
We're
have never done that.
We're saying
you are.
No, we're not.
saying that
Not right now.
No,
But
we
10
never
minutes ago,
have.
when you had some dumbass on the line who was talking about dinosaurs on a fucking yacht, you know, they don't.
I think we're done with you, dude.
Yeah,
you know,
go ahead.
I mean, if you know how to make your point, because we've been sitting for several minutes online and you never really got to a point. If your idea is that we make broad generalizations, look, we're atheists, okay? And this is an atheism show, and we critique religion on this program. And we do hold religion responsible for the things that it does. Now, if you want us in every single phone conversation that we have to split hairs and be like, okay, well, we're not talking about this and we're not talking about that. No, to hold religion responsible for the things that it does specifically is not this unfair generalization. And yeah, yes, while there are cultures, there are political systems that have been corrupt and that have been dehumanizing, that have done many of these bad
Sure.
things, to sit there and claim that religion has not had, or that there's too much of an emphasis on religion, when we simply blame religion for its role in those same activities.
Right.
You know, you are what is known as, Jeff D's wife has a wonderful term for guys like you, and it's called ignore stick, right? You're somebody who just wants to whitewash and downplay the role of one thing over another thing. You just don't want to really think about the ramifications too much. You want to give religion a fair shake that it doesn't deserve by saying, oh, well, it's not necessarily any worse than these other things. Well, it has been worse, right?
Well, it fuels a lot of those other things.
Most of the great atrocities that go on in this world have a religious motivation behind them, right? Not all of them, no. We'll admit that straight up front. But I think that if you look at, well, 9/11, you know, it took you know, fundamentalist Islam to motivate that. Most of the, I'd say the overwhelming majority of the anti-Semitism that you see in the modern world had its roots in medieval religious culture, right? You know, look at the history of you know, the Middle Ages, particularly, say, during the time of something like the Black Death, right? Where one of the reasons that people latched onto for why the Black Death, this plague, was ravaging the landscape was that Jews were poisoning wells, right? And you would have entire towns where they would take the entire Jewish population of the town, herd them into barns, and set the barn on fire, right? And these were good Christians doing these things. So to say that, oh, well, you can't just blame religion for stuff, that's a gross generalization. A lot of what you see, most of the atrocities, I think, are attributable to religion. Most of the atrocities that have influenced non-religious systems that commit the same atrocities, those non-religious systems were influenced by these ideas that came before that had a root in religion. I think religion plays a very strong role, and a much stronger role than most other things. So... yeah. And I'm not going to shut up about that.
We have people up for stoning in Iran right now.
Yeah.
We've got Uganda passing laws to want to kill or imprison gays for life. I mean, this is now. This isn't like 100 years ago or 500 years ago or in some antiquity. This is in today's world right now, religion at the root.
Yeah.
People dying, people being executed in gruesome ways because of religious belief. And Christians in Uganda and Muslims in Iran. And so nobody gets the pass. But I wanted to clarify, when I was talking about salvation being dehumanizing, I don't just mean if you believe in a hell. Even if you don't believe in a hell, the central tenet of Christianity is that Jesus Christ was put to death as a human sacrifice for the redemption of mankind's deprivation. And as long as a person accepts that that act took place and was just, they're saying that an execution was required to make things right for me with God. So the idea is that whatever I did, whatever I'm guilty of, required an execution for recompense. Whether I would go to hell or not go to hell is irrelevant. It is dehumanizing to say that a human being should be killed for being a human being, but luckily Jesus was killed instead, so now we don't have to be. Regardless of whether you think after I die, I just die, after I die, I go to hell, I go to purgatory, whatever you dream, it doesn't matter. The central tenet of salvation is based on an execution human sacrifice, a blood sacrifice that was required, supposedly by this Christian God, in order to atone for people being people. That's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is...
So, look, if this were a political show, we'd talk about that, right? If this were a show, if this were the, something else experience, some political party experience, we'd talk about that, right?
Right.
If this were the vegetarian experience, we might rave about
and there's skeptics, too. I mean, there's skeptical podcasts and things that you can listen to that cover all kinds of things, but we are
this is an atheism
program.
show, so don't be surprised when we talk about religion and criticize religion more than, say, we criticize, XYZ political party, right?
Okay. Oh, and
Says so right here on the label.
I'm being prompted, I think, to make an announcement that Threadgills is at 6:30 at 301 West Riverside Drive. Next week is the show number 666 with Matt and Jeff. I think they have a little bit of special plans. You can mention that it's special, I'm told. And let's see. Is that for real? I don't think I'm supposed to read that part. Okay, so we'll go to... I think it looks like...
Joe is on line 2.
Okay, this is Joe in Dallas. Hi, Joe.
Hello, how are you guys?
Oh, it's a female Joe. I had no clue.
Oh, the J-O is you.
Okay.
I was calling to talk to you guys about your patience that I've seen with some people as a fan of your show.
Well,
I get... Oh, my gosh. My boyfriend has these bumper stickers on the back of his car. One of them said atheist, but it got torn off a bunch of times. The other one said, born okay the first time, and the other one said, keep your theology off my biology.
Beautiful, I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Since he put those on, we get evangelists every day, 7 a.m. on Saturday, every single day.
I'm jealous.
It's an opportunity. Deconvert them.
You mean they come to your door? You mean they come to your door?
Fix them.
I am so jealous.
And, he has no patience with them. I mean, he is just... He's worse than Jesse on his patience. He has zero patience.
You know what you need to do? You need to just videotape these encounters and YouTube them.
Oh, I know, right?
You should do that. I'm not kidding you. You should do it. It would be beyond awesome.
And now they bring children with them. So you think it's Girl Scout cookies, but it's not. And it's like, I want some Thin-Mints. Where are my Thin-Mints?
Yes, or the peanut butter ones. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like when they come to the door and they don't have cookies, you need to explain to them that that's a requisite.
You need to give them cookies. Yeah, or just, have cookies for them or something.
And I like the way that you guys go about things. You go about it to where people can call you and approach you instead of you forcing people to listen to you.
Oh, thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing that. We get so many criticisms from people saying, why are you going out and attacking people's beliefs? And we're like, you know what? People call us. Thank you, yes.
You can always turn your TV off.
Oh, a viewer noticed.
We don't even have internet. I mean, we watch it on YouTube because we live in Dallas.
Okay.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's like, if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yep.
I don't like Benny Hill or whatever his name is, so I don't watch him.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, that's kind of how things work in our wonderful free society, isn't it?
Okay.
I know.
So, what fun door-to-door evangelist stories do you have to share with us? There must be some.
We got one lady one time, and she had a kid with her, and this time I answered the door. He wasn't there. And I was like, oh, are you selling Girl Scout cookies or candles or something? And she's like, do you have Jesus in your heart? And I'm just like, no. I want cookies. I sat there bitching at this lady for 10 minutes about how I wanted cookies.
You should, tell her, come back with cookies and we'll have a chat.
Yeah, I know. And what's funny...
Say I had Jesus in my spleen one day.
Do you have to go? Sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
Oh, another thing that's funny to me is that they only tear off his atheist sticker as if they don't understand what theology and biology are.
That's
or
funny.
They don't understand what born okay the first time means. so his atheist sticker's been torn off like 5 or 6 times now, but those stickers are intact. And it's like, I do not get it.
Well, probably not. No.
What I love about what you're saying, Joe, is that last bumper sticker, born right the first time.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. We are okay. Human beings are okay. There is not anything inherently wrong with being a human being, and making mistakes is how we learn. It is not, it's not a crime, and it's okay. And for somebody to convince us that being human requires some sort of external fix, and they can sell that to people, and that they instill children with that kind of self-depravity.
Oh, it's sick. And
yeah.
So, have you watched Jesus Camp?
Yes, we did. We did.
Oh my God.
I agree.
It's disgusting. Like,
Yes.
it makes me, like, sad for them.
Have you ever thought about doing fun stuff when these guys turn up, like answering the door in some sort, like some kind of, you know, like have your boyfriend answer the door and like wearing one of your dresses or something, or just doing stuff to mess with their heads. Yeah, or something like that, or yeah, or just like a little baby bonnet with a pacifier in his mouth and diapers. And,
You should. I mean, if you get them
on a leash,
regularly, yeah.
And you're like, you know, what? We're busy, right?
These are YouTube moments for sure.
I mean, just and YouTube all these things. It would just
Do
be
it.
great.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it,
Come on, Joe.
and then email us.
I'll do it and I'll post it.
Yes, that is what YouTube is for. Don't you see?
Yeah, email us. We'll put you on the blog.
Oh, the next time they come, because guaranteed they will be here next Saturday at like 7 or 8 in the morning.
There you go.
I so totally want to live where you
You
guys
need to
live.
plan your sets and your scripts and everything and get that going.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. And I came from a Bible Belt, like Branson, Missouri. It was like a huge Bible Belt town, and I never got door knockers.
That's
and
funny.
now that I'm back in Texas,
And Dallas is a big city.
everything.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
It would almost be worth living in Dallas for.
There are some good door-to-door videos on YouTube. You should look them up at some point. There's some people that do door-to-door evangelist videos that are somewhat funny.
I'm telling you, Joe, it'd be a big hit.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
We'll post them. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you for sharing. That was
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
hilarious.
Bye.
Oh, that was
Okay.
that's
And
awesome.
so now we've got Clifford in Chattanooga.
Clifford,
Okay, Clifford.
Hello.
Hello.
how are you? Thanks for waiting.
If you want to hear really good evangelist or fundamentalist stories, I've got quite a few. And the channel will be happy to know I'm a Christian, but I'm one of those liberal, more progressive Christians. At least I think I am myself.
Okay.
But my question goes more along the lines of the caller before the last. But I just kind of wanted to know, what do you guys think about the whole progressive Christianity movement? Or what I perceive is there seems to be a few theologians and a few New Testament scholars that have this more progressive view on things like the Bible and belief and all these sort of things.
I did a blog post recently called "Is Cherry Picking Okay?" And that's usually what that's labeled. When somebody goes in and says, I'm just going to reject the parts of the Bible that seem heinous to me and go with the ones that are good. And I compared it to joining the KKK because you support the social events, but you're not really a racist. If that is logical, then I suppose to a person that does it, it's fine. In my view, I would have trouble holding up a Bible and saying, I support this book, and then denouncing particular verses that I know are in there. I mean, there are things that are in there that are not, in my opinion, morally defensible. And for a person to call themselves a Christian, they are coming forward. Basically, when you say that, people accept that as you are promoting the Bible and what's in the Bible and the God of the Bible and the Jesus of the Bible and all of it. If you don't, then my question is, why label yourself a Christian? Why not just say, I'm a theist, I believe in a God, but I really don't think that God that's described in the Bible is a good guy, so that's not my God.
Well, one, like, Episcopal bishop, his name is John Shelby Spong. The way he looks at it is he calls it the Bible or any sort of religious text is a way to point to God, not a sort of this all encompasses God and all Scripture is inerrant. And that's sort of the way I feel. But now, to answer your question, why would you call yourself a Christian? Now, I don't know. I mean, like, because I never thought of a Christian as someone that says, oh, okay, I've got the Bible, it's inerrant, I'm going to accept it all regardless, despite anything else. But I don't know if you can legitimately call yourself a Christian. Fundamentals will say, no, you're not a Christian, and I've gotten a lot of that because I don't accept the Genesis account of creation, or I don't.
Well, just for the record, I'm not saying that you're not a Christian. I wouldn't say that if a person cherry picks that they shouldn't call themselves a Christian. I'm simply saying that when a person says they're a Christian, most people consider that they accept the doctrines that are laid out in the Bible. That's the book. Just like if a person told me he was a Muslim, I would think that he agrees with what's in the Quran.
Okay.
So, but I do think that, you know, it's fair for a person like you to say, well, that's not how I look at it. I don't accept it as totally, you know, 100% correct. But then the question usually comes up, which is, how do you know which parts are real and which parts aren't? Like, which parts do you use and which parts don't you? And that normally boils down to, I stick with the parts that I think are morally good and correct, and I toss the parts that seem really evil and horrible. And what that shows me is that,
you've arrived at,
yeah, basically you're just using your own
religion.
morality then, in that case, to then define what you think is okay in the Bible, what you don't think is okay in the Bible. And my point would be, why not just go with yourself then, instead of pretending that a book is telling you what's right?
Because ultimately, if the only problem that I have with folks who call themselves liberal or progressive Christians from a standpoint of the ideas that they espouse is that you finally get to a point where you can look at them and say, you appear to have thought about all of these things, and why at this point do you really think that you need what this religion is selling you anymore? You have come up with your own notions of right and wrong, but based upon rational thought, right? Based upon an understanding of things like the consequences of actions and empathy towards your fellow man. And at a certain point, you have understood that yes, you can be a good person. You'll make mistakes in life. You'll sometimes do bad things that you regret and are ashamed of, but you take those as lessons that you learn and you move on. You become the steward of your own personal growth. And so at a certain point, once you really have a handle on all of those ideas, why then, where is the point at which you still feel that it is necessary to latch on to whatever it is that Christian belief is trying to sell you? At what point is this still a worthwhile product, when it is no longer really informing your moral choices necessarily, because you can look at the Bible and say, okay, well, this is in there and that's in there, and that is very demonstrably wrong and not something that I would ever condone. At a certain point, does it simply become rooted in the basic emotional need that I think is at a lot of religion, which is, I like the idea of a celestial parent figure watching over me. It is a comforting idea. It is a thing that makes the universe feel less large and cold and empty. That sort of thing. Have we stripped religion, Christianity, whichever religion you subscribe to its fundamental essentials? At which point, the doctrine doesn't matter anymore. So it can just be, your own definition of it at that point. Well, so that's what I've always found unusual about Spong. I mean, I've read Spong's stuff, I've listened to him speak on television, and I just say to myself, why doesn't this guy just go whole hog? I mean, he's like 97% atheist. What is the bit that's keeping him sort of tied down to it? Is it just that little bit of an emotional hook that it has in him, that there is the comforting aspect of the belief and how he likes to imagine Jesus must have been, and how he likes to imagine God must be, and the comfort that gives him, that with all of his intellect, that still has its hooks in him? I don't know. I wish I could say. So.
Well, I know with Spong, like, he doesn't seem to have even that idea of a parent figure in the sky.
Right.
I saw a video with him, and he was saying, why don't we change God to the definition of something that's at the heart of life and the basis of existence itself? It's sort of like that whole Paul Tillich idea that God can't just be a being, God has to be the basis of being itself.
Mm-hmm.
But
at that point, all your...
Probably, I would say,
go ahead.
I guess there probably is like an emotional hook, but I mean, I can't say that for everyone, and I'm not even sure what I would say for myself, why I still hold on to certain beliefs and such. I think it's different for every person who has actually took time and thought about what they believe and not just taken this leap of faith and said, oh, I'm going to believe this regardless, no matter what comes up, no matter what else happens, no matter who I meet, and yada, yada, yada. But for those who sit and think about it, I think in know with my mother, a lot of things have happened with her where that belief sort of becomes ingrained and it's personal for her, and it's not really she's latching on to a dogma, but she's latching on to something she believes is true based on her own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think what I would like to see religion do is, instead of being this organized, dogmatic thing, is that for people who are religious, that they're religious based on their own experience, and they're not religious based on, oh, just someone told you to be religious, and it becomes, I guess, sort of existential for each individual.
Right. Well, I usually say that just people create God in their own image, right? I mean, and it comes back to having that sort of parent figure concept. So, again, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is difficult to give that fundamental emotional need up for a lot of folks. Who knows? That's just my Tracy. Give us the benefit of your wisdom on this. Come on.
I tend to think that it's just something that's culturally endowed. If it wasn't indoctrinated as a youth, I mean, I've met so many people who were raised in secular homes since I joined ACA, who didn't grow up with this idea that a God exists, and it really, in my head, reinforces that it comes from somewhere, that it's not something that I watched a video on someone posted to the internet the other day, and they were talking about Muslims. There was 3 Muslims that were talking, and one of the guys was saying something about how there's very few verses in the Quran that deal with proving God exists. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, as an atheist, that's right, because why waste the paper since there isn't a proof of it? So mm-hmm. It wouldn't get you anywhere. You can't prove it, so why would you try? But his summary of that was the reason that it's not in there is because people are born inherently already believing in God, so there's no need to prove it, mm-hmm. because we all already believe it. Well, I'm sure that in a Sharia law Muslim state, everybody does believe in God, because if you don't, you would be killed. And so here, what it boils down to for me is that I think that people are instilled with it, not that they're endowed with it. So you get it later in life, and then you accept it or you don't. And if you accept it, even if you go through the steps of losing religious dogmas and doctrines, you still maintain that feeling that there's a God there. And for me, personally, that feeling was very strong, and it was the last thing that I lost, because I had gone out of Christianity, all along theism, all the way down, and finally it just dwindled out into, what am I looking at here? And I'm looking at a universe, and that's all I really see, and that's all that seems to be really real. And whatever I'm calling God has to be encompassed in this thing that is everything, which is the universe. And so when it got down to that point, going backwards, I think what happens is when you're really tiny, they teach you God exists, and God is real, and Jesus, clap your hands, and the whole thing. And then you start to learn the apologetics and the doctrines as you get older and you can understand them. And then when it comes out in a lot of people, including myself, the doctrines and stuff go, and then that belief that was instilled at that really early age, before you even could think for yourself, is the last thing to go, because it seems like an inherent thing. It feels like something that is just as inherent as a heartbeat. And so it's very hard to drop it, because even if you intellectually think to yourself, I don't understand why I believe this, it's just this feeling that persists. And I don't know if that's your experience or not, but that was certainly mine.
Well, I guess, I don't think I know myself well enough to be sure, but, I think that's what it is for most people, but I think when you have the whole religious experiences, you have a number of types of those. Like, some people say, well, from the way my life's been, the only way I could have gotten where I am is if there was some sort of God leading me and guiding me and so forth. Not that that's a proof of God, because
that's their training kicking in.
That's a dehumanizing thing again, though.
Yeah,
to say that what they did, they're going to say, I have to attribute it to something else. I couldn't possibly have done what I did.
Yeah,
that's sad to me.
That's part of that training. So
it's not so, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm not saying the point is just the way I am. I mean, I'm talking about examples where people say there were such difficulties that it's hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
I understand.
See it as a dehumanizing thing, but the way I've had people tell me.
No,
Well, I
no,
think
they think it's uplifting, but it is dehumanizing. That's my point. It uplifts them because they feel like, oh, I had somebody looking out for me, and they feel good about that.
Which is that
and they're
parent figure
happy and
notion again.
positive.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is saying, I could not have done this, even though they did.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the kicker.
Yeah, they have been convinced at the root that they are worthless, essentially.
But it's
And
presented very positively, so I understand what you're saying. When they say it, they're not saying it in a self-defeating way. They're saying it in a very happy way, like, oh, thank God, God was there to help me, and he really pulled me through this, and it sounds all positive, but the underlying message is, I didn't do this for myself, even though they did.
Could not have done it.
Yeah,
possibly
often it
for
is, I
myself.
couldn't have,
So-
yeah.
Anyway, Clifford, we've got a couple other callers lined up, but we appreciate your point of view, all right?
Yeah, thank you for calling.
Definitely. You take care.
And we've got William from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
He's on line dos.
Hi, William.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hey.
Oh, sorry.
Go
You
ahead.
good? Yeah. How's it going?
I was just pretty good. You?
Fine.
Go ahead.
I'm an atheist, and I was calling in to ask a question about an argument I had with my mother the other day about the subject. She came to me and actually said to me that the reason why Stalin and Hitler did the things is because they didn't believe that did the things that they did was because they didn't believe in a God and they had no moral grounds, and that led to them doing the things they did.
Yeah, we get that a lot. We hear that a lot.
Yeah, actually, if you would like, William, I did a blog post not too long ago. It'll be still a little fresh. You might have to scroll down a bit. Do you know where our blog is at?
Yeah.
Okay, I did one called something like Can You Be Moral Without God? And I went through this whole thing. But the main thing is, I mean, yes, Stalin probably was an atheist. I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. Hitler, it's arguable. I don't know. He made different kinds of statements that could be interpreted different ways. The point is, people do things that are good and bad, whether they believe in God or whether they don't believe in God. It doesn't matter if you believe in God. That's not what keeps you from doing horrible things. What keeps you from doing horrible things is either your own moral conscience or the law. Otherwise, you'll go do whatever you want to do.
But here's the reason why this atheism leads to lack of a moral code notion is a complete load of crap, and that is that this notion that it is a theistic notion that God is the author of our morality, right? So therefore, it is also a theistic notion, theistic notion that if there is no God, then therefore we have no architect of our morality, and therefore we are all amoral and can do whatever, right? That is not an atheistic notion. That's a theistic notion.
Correct.
Atheists don't believe in God, so therefore we do not believe that a God is the architect of our morality in the first place. So no atheist would then, from that, make the logical conclusion, well, therefore, since there is no God, right? We can just do whatever, and there's no more. Right, it's a false premise. It's just like saying, well, the only reason that I don't defecate on the sidewalk is because of the existence of unicorns. But if there are no unicorns, that means I can go out and just start defecating on the sidewalks. Cool. No, you see what I mean? There's like no real logical link between the two things, right? It is only because theists have been indoctrinated to believe that the only reason that there is right and wrong is because there is a God saying, all right, look, little from column A, little from column B. This is yeah, and so...
I try and respond to the point she made by saying that I don't get my morality from this God creature. I get my morality from other humans who basically take us and judge us when we do things that we find morally reprehensible, things that are harmful to the society in general, sort of like, well, the example of killing 6 million Jews is completely morally reprehensible, and it's harmful to society because it's taking away somebody's right to live, and I don't get that morality from God, and I didn't think she got it either.
Right, and additionally...
Although it was a man of God, right? It was Martin Luther who authored the tract, this infamous anti-Semitic tract, that was very influential upon just about all modern anti-Semitic thinking today.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, 9/11 was done for God, so, I mean, God inspires a lot of crazy things, too, the belief in God, and, I mean, if we're just going to have a pissing contest about who can do more harm, I would put religion up to atheism any day, and I think we would win hands down.
But the point is, it's not really this, I think this whole who has the bigger body count
Correct.
issue is a huge red herring. It's brought up.
It is.
It's brought up by clowns like Dinesh D'Souza and guys like that to put atheists on the defensive. We don't even need to say things like you just said, right?
Right.
The point is that atheism is not a belief. It is a form of disbelief. It is a statement of disbelief pertaining to a particular question, which is, do deities exist? Does anything called a God exist? Our answer is no, we don't believe that anything like that does. So that's what atheism means. People don't perform acts based upon what they don't believe. They perform acts based upon what they do believe, right? Hitler's racial purity ideas and his megalomania, all of those, these were ideas that he did believe, right? Stalin's megalomania and his thirst for power those were things that he did believe, right? He had this vision for what he wanted the Soviet Union to be, right? Which was this dictatorship with him at the top. We're getting some odd sounds, so I'm going to put you on hold while you work out whatever that is. So, yeah, you don't say, because I don't believe in unicorns, I will defecate on the sidewalk, right? I mean, there's no logical link from I don't believe a thing, therefore I can do a thing. You act based upon a conviction, not a lack thereof.
Yeah, and I would additionally say that, yes, law does keep you in line, but it's also important to remember that we are social animals. Not all animals are social. So, for example, it would be much harder to train a pet snake than a pet dog. Or, if something that is not a social animal doesn't react or respond as well to social pressure because it doesn't have those same inherent tendencies toward empathy and toward, like, understanding others in the society. Social animals are defined by how well they relate to others of their group. Humans are very good at that. Dogs are very good at that. Some other animals, or lions would be very good at that. If you can cooperate with other members of your society and you are a social animal, you survive better in that society, so the welfare of the society becomes paramount to your own survival, and so it's kind of in a whole interconnected thing. It benefits me, it benefits others, it benefits the whole society.
You can't take morals out of a social context. I mean, if you look at some uninhabited planet like Mars, if a rock falls onto another rock on Mars and breaks that rock, has the big rock done an immoral thing? Well, no, it's just there's no morality outside of a social context. So that's why then the notion of absolute morality that a lot of Christian fundamentalists latch onto is a little bit bogus, because without a specific social species to apply these rules to, it has no application.
Well, the other thing is religion doesn't offer an objective morality, because if you ask a Christian, is genocide okay? They'll say no, and you show them genocide in the Old Testament, they'll say, well, back then it was okay. Or they'll have some explanation. God said to do it, so it was okay. Or, so there's a lot of Christians who will justify something that they would call immoral right now as moral in a different context. And then they'll turn around and say that, how does an atheist have an objective morality? And it's like, well, I don't, but neither do you.
It kind of comes back to the thing I heard earlier on a different show. You guys said that just because God says it's good doesn't mean it's good. It is like a Euthyphro's, I forget.
Euthyphro's dilemma, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It kind of comes back to that.
Which came first, God or the moral precept?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, so hopefully that's something to feed back to your mom a bit with.
And also, I just wanted to thank you guys for the show, because it helped me stop being an irrational atheist and just saying, oh, there's no God and I hate God and religion is this really bad thing and I'm not just going to pay attention to it. Your show helped me, it helped me become a skeptic and not just take things for granted just because somebody tells me that they're true.
Well, we're glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's comments like that make my day, and I really appreciate you letting us know.
Yeah. So good luck. I mean, you're on a journey, and just keep going, keep thinking about stuff and questioning and hitting them back with the hard questions. That's the important part.
Thanks.
All right, man. Thank you. All right. Do we have? I think we have time for one more. We have about 3 minutes to go.
Do we have one more?
Well, we do, but we don't. We're about to find out who that is. Don't forget, we're going to go to Threadgills after this and chow down.
That's right, 6:30.
Yeah.
Cast and crew.
And there is a new nonprofits also, so it'll be up on iTunes hopefully this week. But you can already link to it from the Atheist Experience blog. at atheistexperience.blogspot.com. Okay, we have, who's left?
We can just go for it.
Tell us. Yes, all right.
Just go for it.
Hello, line 1, you're on.
This is God.
Oh, my Lord, I believe.
I'm calling from the control booth.
Okay. Is there a special message, something you'd like to tell the world?
No, actually, the lines got cleared and we had miscellaneous audio problems. So I wanted to thank you both for doing a great show. Remind everybody to go to Thread Guilds. Don't forget to mention the Bat Cruise.
Bat Cruise!
Yes.
September.
We're going to go cruising for bats. See, we're feeding back now. It sounds like some strange, trippy, psychedelic
There's
thing.
information about the Bat Cruise at the ACA website. Go check it out and come if you can. It's a load of fun.
I mean, if you're going to have us feeding back like this, you should turn us purple again or something. Make it really psychedelic.
The purple thing was good. I never looked better.
No, that was terrific. Well, what next?
We are dead in the water.
No, we're just. This has been a good show, Tracy. Yeah, well, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, we've had some good calls, and I hope so.
We've just scared them all away. So, in the last 3 minutes or something,
Thank you for the cast,
Let's
and
wing
the
it.
crew, and everybody that's involved in putting on the show. And don't they sometimes show themselves or something? If you want to show yourself,
show yourself.
we do have some technical
Don't hide
questions.
behind. No, I'm going to go ahead and plug this nonprofits that I just
Do it.
did.
And don't forget the Lamb of God.
No, we will not. The Lamb of God with his little tattoo.
We have a new
Isn't that
toy.
hot? Yes.
He's got a cross on his butt. And
There we go. Whoa, that's where all lambs should have.
so he really is a Lamb of God. It's not just
That's
a
right.
lamb. It's a Christian lamb.
And he's just loving my shoulder right now. We did the most recent Gorilla episode of the Nonprofits with my friends, Gia Grillo, my dear friend, and our buddy Chris Connor. We did a 137-minute epic show that is available now. A couple of weeks ago, Russell Glasser and Lene did a show also. These are just ones that we've decided, hey, wait a minute, we can just pick up a mic and start recording ourselves.
There you go.
While the biweekly Nonprofits program is still on hold, and Matt is moving and all kinds of stuff is going on.
And another announcement, Texas Free Thought Convention in October.
Okay.
Throw that in.
There's that. So go to that and think freely and stuff. So yeah, go to our blog and download that, and then feedback on it. They'll let us know what you think.
And just to plug Gia, she's the one that was featured on the blog.
She
as,
was, yeah.
Interrupting some street preachers who were assaulting people, just
Yeah.
verbally, on benches in the park, just going and pushing religion, and she decided to step up and question them in front of their target. So that was kind of a fun thing, and we blogged a
She
little bit
is
about
made
that.
of awesome in all its forms.
All righty. We need to
anyway.
wrap, it says, so we're going to be wrapping up.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you to all those people whose names are up there now.
There they are. Our folks.
Hey.
Okay, and they're
Good
all
job.
dressed. It's amazing. They're usually.
They're naked normally.
Yeah, they don't manage to get dressed in time for that shot again because it's like, oh, we're on. So, all right, next week it's 666.
Thanks for watching.
So join all of us sinners and heathens and stuff. And the full version of Listen to Reason
There you
is
go.
available for download. Brian Steeksma finished that out, and it's a big proggy epic, so
We're done.
go jam to that. Tracie!
Martin.